determine before you go in there which team member is going to do which role. The questions are both technical and strategic. So it has a number of little things here if you aren't as familiar with the questionnaire. Make sure that you reassure your interviewee if they have a concern that any quotes we may use will not be personally identifiable unless they give us permission to do so. And there is highlighted text, actually blue text in here, which are the notes. Do either of you have a mouse? Okay. Can you get me one? Yeah. Because I think what we're dealing with here is a double screen instead of a single one. Okay. I'm going to continue on. I've put just a very brief introduction in here, basically a good morning, good afternoon. This is in here not to give you exact words, but just give you a framework to work within. And, you know, after you kind of tell them a little bit about the project, what their input is going to be used for, then you can say, hey, tell me a little bit about, you know, your role and responsibilities there, and then, you know, let's get started. If there's any concerns about the scope, there's a little information down here about it. This version isn't really meant to be a version that you would send out to your interviewee. We do have a version that's just questions. This one is meant for you to use. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing in it that's bad. It's just really written more for the person who's doing the interviewing. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and I'll go to question 1. And you'll notice a lot of the early questions in this have to do with the types of data. So you'll notice there's a number of matrices and everything else. And the first question is, what is the nature of the data that your agency is responsible for? And we've defined a number of data domains. So when you go through this question, you just check off the ones that are applicable to the agency. And then we have a little bit of a definition pyramid underneath there, and that's just to help you determine which
you have?
Yeah. Thanks. Perfect.
Awesome.
Okay. Sorry for that interruption. I'm fixing my screen right now. Just to enter the different types. This question is a little bit intense, and so we definitely had to script it and put a little bit more information on there about, you know, the objective and what we were trying to do in this particular one. So if you, as you're reviewing the questionnaire, if you have any questions about that, please send them out to the group, and we'll make sure that they get answered. But if you notice, there's a pretty extensive paragraph right up there in front. So take a look at that. The second question are, how are decisions, you know, how are decisions made to make data available? And, you know, what criteria is being used? This is pretty much an open format question. And underneath, if you notice, it says interviewer script. This question is used to determine what kind of processes, decision criteria is used to make data available. So, you know, ask about processes and what factors or qualities about the data you see there. So, Well, that's what I get for using Windows 8 for something that was tried and true on the other machine. Back to question 3. Apologies for the delays. I was trying to get this thing on the screen, and apparently my box here is defaulted to a double screen. So I can see it on my screen, but nobody can see it on theirs, in front of them. So we'll just move forward. The third one is there a business strategy in place that addresses the open data issue and the metrics for success? And if you have any questions while we're on the line, since we will probably have a little extra time, feel free to pipe up. But this question is basically just trying to identify the strategies the interviewee may have. Notice that it has a check mark and 3 options underneath it, as well as a brief description. So you not only want to get those particular ones, whether it's open data business strategy or related metrics or governance, but you also want to get descriptions of those if you can. Okay. For question 4, this is about who are the owners of the data. And so you're seeking information about how the data is actually owned or what group within there it's owned by. Note that there are a couple of other questions underneath this. So in some cases, you may have someone who actually owns that particular data set. In that case, ask them about, the data that they actually own. For data that's created but not necessarily owned by them, know the authoritative sources for that. So if you have some, say, financial numbers that are owned and you're talking to an IT guy, what you want to do is make sure that you have an idea that if financial data sets are going out or statistical data sets are going out, who within the agency owns it. So keep in mind that while you're doing this survey, part of it is we're actually looking at this more from an agency point of view, but we are trying to get an idea for the people that we're talking to what their role and responsibilities are. So then from 4, are there any sensitivities involved in this? And this has to do with anything that is sensitive, for example, personally identifiable information. And we have a number of classifications there. It's important to collect as many that might be applicable, but then also if you can get a description of it, that just gives us additional anecdotal information that we can use for the best practices. 5 has 2 questions associated with it. It has a 5 and a 5A. And the 5A is mitigation strategies in case that the data is accidentally released. So if your data, if the interviewee has, or their agency has things in place in case they face the risk of that data being released. And, who's ensuring that the data is safe. In regard to who has decision authority for, number 6 is who has decision authority for releasing the data. Keep in mind that this can vary. It could be legal, it could be IT, it could be finance, it could be a variety of different sources. So in talking about the different data types, try to find out if multiple levels are also involved. Sometimes it passes one level, but it has to go through certain levels of governance. Try to collect as much of that as possible. There's a very good chance you're not going to get all of it, but if you at least give us an idea that more than one level is required to release data, it gives us an idea of what kind of practices are actually used by the agency in releasing data. For number 7, there are, it's basically who are the customers who need access to the data. So in this particular instance, and this is a pretty involved question, so I would tell you before you walk into this interview, make sure you get very familiar with this particular one. Question 7 is collecting who it's going out, who's using it, who are the actual customers. So this is the marketplace that the open data is going out to, whether it's within the agency or outside of the agency. And for external, we have the general public, academia, international organizations. If you find one that's not there, pencil it in. And then if you need to put it someplace, put it underneath other agency in the data entry and just denote what it is if we haven't covered everything. But I think we've got quite a few options there. So in looking at them, ranging from cities, the NGOs, and the international organizations, as well as state and local government, you should be able to choose something from there. And then also, if there's some larger customers, ask them to list those that would need access. And then the second part of number 7, and both of these are matrix questions, are what are the channels in which data is consumed. So in looking at how data may be consumed by the organization, we have a number of different options there, ranging from visualizing on the website to visualize reports to downloading data sets, especially that's where often the APIs become involved. Mobile applications, which are, of course, becoming hotter. And then whether other applications are accessing it. And then a system-to-system transfer. If you find something else, we do have one other category. Please put that in there, so select it and just make a note of it. So for number 8, for question number 8, on how does your agency decide whether or not to create private, hybrid, or public APIs, we've put a definition of each one in there for you. So we have defined what those are, how they work. And so get familiar. I would say probably questions 7, 8, and 9 especially are much more technically involved. So make sure that you take a look at those before you go into the interview. And in this case, we have the different options, the private, hybrid, and public. And then we have drivers, and then we have the examples of those drivers. And so try to collect as much information as possible. There's a very good chance, unless you have somebody who's actually technical, they're not going to know this. So if your interviewee is saying to you, hey, I don't know this information, feel good about just trying to get which ones are which, if they know that, and feel good about passing the question by. But, of course, answer as much information as possible.
Allow them to go dig into the homework before we show up, to go research it and go talk to the technical team, come back with an answer. Or once the interview's done, we don't want anyone to what approach you take.
I think if they say we'll get back to you, and we say, yeah.
We'll take it.
Just don't close the survey until you get that back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking to, there we go.
Although, Kim, I'm pretty sure you guys have covered this before, and pardon me if I'm not remembering most of this, but we've got all these names on the spreadsheet. I'm thinking that whoever gave these names to us to put on the spreadsheet are their supervisors or sponsors from their agencies who have let them know that they need to do this right.
In some cases, I think, I know for some of the contacts, especially the DOD ones, I know they've had a warm touch. And for the others, I'm not sure of. And some have been added by people who say, hey, we should talk to this person or we should talk to that person. So I think it's going to vary. And that's why the warm touch is needed from us to say, hey, we've identified you as someone that is knowledgeable about this and we'd like you to participate in it. A lot of the DOD contacts, they received an email a while back ago from, I think, William Barlow, or Bill Barlow, who said.
Yeah, so when after I sent an email out to all these people saying, we're working on this project and we're going to be contacted for this interview and stuff, were you wanting to copy I'm coming from, why I'm asking these questions. My question is, you know, this is an hour or an hour and 15 minutes worth of interview that we want people to be committed to and give us some good answers, useful answers. And if they don't have enough information at that point, they need to get, you know, it would be nice if they can get back to us later with the answers, which requires a little bit of commitment. And for that commitment, they need some executive sponsorship. Otherwise, you know, we're not going to get it. So that's why I was asking that question. Do we know that we have that executive sponsorship?
The leverage we used in the past is the funding funds. So,
Right.
you could go back to that and ask them if they're having trouble reaching the experts. Have that leverage. I would say it's exactly that. This is what we did. These make it I'm sure that we can also leverage something with that.
Okay, I think we're on number 9, and in the questionnaire. And for number 9, does your agency provide access to data anytime, anywhere, on any device? And we really felt we did need to define this, and so we've put the definition in the interview script, and also shown how this applies to some of the other questions. And this one is a matrix question too. Like I said, 7, 8, and 9 are kind of some extensive questions, and these are much more technical. We've put options on here for the types of data access that the agency currently provides, including a no app or website, which would probably be pretty rare unless we're talking about a specific type of data that they may only be providing to a very minute group. And in thinking back to the marketplace and the customers, keep in mind there may be some options there where they're sending that data out hard copy or sending it out on some sort of device where they would be getting it, CD, DVD, or whatever. Of course, leveraging the platform's agnostic content management, so whatever application and the way it provides data. Providing a mobile optimized website, developing hybrid apps in-house, and then providing native mobile apps. This one is really much more geared more to mobile, and the second part of the question has to do with mobile access. So 9 has a regular kind of matrix, but it has a 9A, where we're asking about if they provide mobile access. We have some questions about the cost estimates for that, and then what kind of cost elements. So keep in mind for a question like this, where we're really diving deeply down on just mobile, there are probably very few people who can just off the top of their heads, unless they're involved with the mobile strategy, would be able to answer this. This would definitely be a question where, you know, we were discussing, hey, if they can get back to us on it, this would be probably one of them that I would expect we would have to, might have to either come back around or see if they would be open to provide that data to us a little bit later once they talk to whoever had it. Okay, in this particular case on number 10, we're talking about the vocabularies or ontologies, which are, you know, have to do with data dictionaries. So this is how a lot of the data elements are defined. And we wanted to make sure that for people who weren't in this world, we have some definitions of and some of the lingo that we would expect as answers for those questions. So you see some of this down here. And then also, this is one of those questions that you probably should check on before you go in. We've provided a link to Wikipedia for some of the discussion on that to give you an overview before you start getting answers for this question. Are there any questions out there? Okay. Let's go to number 11. And number 11 has to do with how the data is described. This is really the meta tag question. And so you're asking, you know, what kind of meta tags are used, actually, if they are used first, and then how they're used and in what way. And we have some examples there. These examples, of course, are provided that if you kind of get stuck there and someone's saying, well, I don't really know what you're talking about, you can throw some of these out to kind of maybe jog them and say, oh, okay, I understand. And we've put a little scripting there too to help you. Some of these have, if you notice, some of the scripting actually has additional questions in it to help clarify the topic or the main question that you're asking them. Okay, for question 12. And then this one has to do with the type of outreach that's being done to make those customers that you previously defined in an earlier question knowledgeable or aware of what kind of data sets are out there. And so this has to do with how they're doing it. Are they using data.gov? Are they using some of the other sites? Are they sending things out to these organizations to make them aware that this data is actually available? And in regard to, for example, the APIs, are those APIs out there in any type of API registry? How is the data discovered? For 13, this is getting into the customer side of it. And keep in mind, this is a question that you hope they can answer, but they may have to go to someone to find out what the customer experience is. And that is, how would someone actually select the data that they want to consume? What tools are available out there? Again, what usually comes to mind first is, of course, data.gov, but we're asking the agencies, how are they doing it? How would somebody get, say, maybe data from their site or data from them, or how are they getting it out there to them? So what are the tools that are being used to help someone select that data? And then 14, this is about how you actually track the consumption of the data. Is it being done? That's number one. So it's very important to find out, is it being done? Are they actually tracking consumption? And if so, how are they doing it? And this is really important for our best practices findings, in that we want to definitely find out, okay, what kind of metrics are being used to actually determine how data is being consumed. Is it just usage? Is it downloads? Is it something else? So try to, select the ones there. We got an other category in case they completely have something different. And then, of course, try to get that anecdotal information, the descriptions. So for 15, this is about what kind of mechanisms are there for receiving data. This is one of the more different questions in there, because for the most part for open data, we've been talking about how it's been more of a push strategy. This is where we start talking about how we pull things in and how they come in from different organizations, and if they're actually pulling data from these users or consumers, and if so, how are they receiving it? And then all of the ways that apply, and we have, of course, online forums and submitting documents and files and other things are how they're getting this data in. For number 16, we're asking, what processes are in place to analyze the usage data, not the data sets themselves. But going back to where we were talking about those metrics, downloads, and the like. So in thinking about the previous questions, and here in the script we've said if you've answered yes to question 14, or they're receiving data, what's the process in place to analyze it? Maybe to make sure it's good, or to make sure that you can bring it in, or do trending or whatever with that particular data, and whether or not that process exists. For 17, it's about does the analysis drive or influence the type of data or the selection of data that's made available to those consumers out there. So getting an idea of are they using analysis? Back to the best practices, and this is, of course, a very important question. So some of those earlier questions, you notice these are much more matrix-based. They're toward the end. So giving you a heads up as an interview team that if you can't get those answered, make sure you get these answered, even if you have to skip around while you're doing the survey. These are the ones that give us a lot of best practices for the usage, and also does it influence. And so for 17, we're asking, if you're doing analysis, you're looking at how this data is being used and being made available. Are you actually using that analysis to determine what kind of data you're making available, what kind you're sending down? Now, last but not least, we have question 18. And this is asking about the applications development roadmap and whether or not it has allowance for uploading and analyzing user-generated data to include refining data selections or generating new data sets. So are we taking that data that we're getting from users and we're creating a data set out of that and maybe making that available? There may be some people who can answer that. There may be those who can't. But this gives us an idea of whether or not there's a movement of data through the system from users to the organization and maybe being used in that organization or out. And for the most part, that's pretty much our questionnaire. Now, are there any questions? Because I'm looking at the clock and it looks like I kind of may have flown through this fairly quickly. But what I was going to do is just briefly go over to what we're going to use for data entry. Oops. So bring that up on the screen. I'm going to go to the actual site. I actually, before I came here, I made sure that I had some screenshots in case things didn't work. But here we can actually see, if you click on the link within the presentation, and it's on page 13, that particular link will take you to, right now, our test version of the SurveyMonkey online survey. And so if you're following along with us and you have internet access, click on that link or cut and paste it, the URL, and just take a look at what we'd be looking at or what you'd be looking at when you'd be doing data entry. Now, one thing, the heads up I'm going to give you immediately is because of the way that this is programmed, the question numbers are not going to match up. So whereas you saw 18 in the Word document, and this one, I believe we go to about 33. And part of that is because we're not always able to combine the matrix part of it and the anecdotal information. So, on the first page of the survey, there's 2 questions. You see that matrix, and it has check marks here. And then you have question 2.
Quick question on that. When you look at the Word document version, I thought you were putting, instead of check marks, the subject areas. Maybe I'm getting the wrong terminology, but I thought, like, for example, this domain is mission support data, which is the first column. And then the subject areas I thought would be mission support activity, that type of thing. So are we entering in those subject areas or just checking off?
I think originally I'm looking at the actual version here, and in this one we're entering. So I'll talk to John Shaw and John Carney about that. I'm not sure we can put a table in this. That's one thing. I know that some of the other survey products, yeah. That means that we'll probably need to get the Word documents from everybody.
But eventually we need to collect it in here. So I mean, it's, the nature of the question changes dramatically without it. All we now know is for the standard EA categories that enterprise support applies. But you don't know if it's what area, what subject area. We won't know that data is what I'm saying. If we go with this.
Okay. We're going to have to, we have, what, a couple of weeks, I guess? So we will powwow on this. This is, of course, not the final, but this is definitely to make sure everybody gets familiar and does exactly what you're doing right now, which is pointing out the differences between the paper survey, the Word version, and then this particular one. Okay. And we did put the pyramid in there, so I know this was to help define that. But yes, you're right. Looking at one and then looking at the other, we do not have any area in there for any anecdotal information. We'll powwow on that and see if we can make a change. Of course, for number 2, you see we have a text box here that you can enter, cut and paste and enter your data in. And oops, thought I was connected. Well, I'm trying to remember which one I put. Boy, the demo gods are not smiling on me today. Thank you. Okay. I'm not sure we need to go through all of the SurveyMonkey survey, but take a look at that link. And there are a number, of course, of, in looking at it, just notice how the questions are in there and how they may differ from the Word document. For example, this is actually the next page of it. And in this particular case, you see question 3 and you see question 4 and 5. And so 3 on the Word document is 3 and 4 in SurveyMonkey. So you see the selection there, and then you see the place for the anecdotal information. And so you'll see a lot of these where we have a yes or no, and then give us a description. Yeah, it's not uncommon to see where we'll have a selection, and then we'll have a place to put that information in.
I suspect we'll have to do number 1 the same way. Check off and then have additional questions where you can put the anecdotal subject area information. That's what I'm thinking. But I might have exploded to 600 questions.
Would you be open to sending John Carney an email? Okay. Thanks. So I guess I'm not going to go, well, we've got an hour.